Hey everyone, Marvin Kane here with installment number 14 in our Answer Man series. Before I continue, I want to thank you once again for your positive comments and all your encouraging words. I really do appreciate that. And it tells me that you're getting something out of all this information. You know, reminded of the famous Sally Fields acceptance speech when she won her Oscar several years ago, where she said, "You like me. You really like me." Well, I like you too. And again, thanks for all the comments, and I'll keep these videos coming. So, last week I talked about thin content. This week I want to talk about duplicate content. So duplicate content is simply content that appears on the internet in more than one place. So as a practical matter, it means the same content that shows up on many different websites. So what's the big deal and why should we care about this? Well, the big deal is that it confuses the search engines. See, Google doesn't know which version it should include or exclude from its index. And it doesn't know which version is the authentic version, the original version, and therefore it doesn't know which version constitutes, is most likely to be the best result to return to you. And so it gets confused and it waters down the validity of each one of the versions. Now, for site owners, the problem there is that you will sacrifice traffic and you will lose your ranking, because Google typically won't display multiple versions of the same content, which forces it to try to decide for itself which is the best version to display. And the result is that all of the versions get watered down, and it's a lose-lose situation. So how does duplicate content happen? Well, in a couple of different ways. For example, yoursite.com and www.yoursite.com are considered by Google to be two different websites, even though they're not. The same is true for the HTTP version and the HTTPS version. Now, in this instance, Google has given us instructions and tools to let Google know that it should, in fact, treat these two different websites as one. But I don't want to get into all of the technicalities of duplicate content and all the different kinds of duplicate content. What I do want to do is talk to you, the site owners and the producers of content, and talk about two different types of duplicate content that you can control and that you should be aware of. Number one, be wary of using a content writing service. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but I'm saying that if you do, there's something you need to be aware of, and I'll illustrate with an example. See, I have a client who hired one of these companies to write his weekly blog post, and he was all excited because he thought that he was satisfying Google's insatiable appetite for fresh, new content. Well, over time, what we saw is that the needle wasn't moving. His rankings weren't improving. In fact, over time, they were going down. So what was going on here? What I did was I copied a snippet from one of his blog posts and pasted it directly into Google's search field, enclosed in quotation marks, to ensure that Google would try to find an exact match for that phrase. What we found is that the content on my client's blog post was the exact same content that showed up on multiple websites, word for word, including the publication date. The other thing I will caution you about is if you're going to write your own content, and there's nothing wrong with that either, but do not go to someone else's website and copy big chunks of someone else's content and paste it into your website. You see, this is a violation for two reasons. Number one, it's duplicate content, but number two, it's plagiarism. Not good. So, here's the thing. You can quote someone else's copy, you can reference someone else's content on your website if you're doing it for a reason, if you're doing it because it bolsters an argument you're making, if it proves a point you're trying to make, if it somehow enhances what you're saying. But if you do that, always be sure to credit the author of the original piece and include a link back to the original source. In that case, it's perfectly fine to do that. So here's the takeaway. Number one, you can use other people's content for inspiration or for ideas, but don't simply copy and paste wholesale chunks of someone else's copy onto your own website and try to pass it off as your own. Number two, it's okay to quote someone else's copy or to quote pieces of someone else's copy as long as you give the author credit and as long as you provide a link back to their website. That's just simply good etiquette. Number three, if you're going to hire a content writing company to write content for you, and that's okay to do that, just make sure that they're not copying someone else's content and selling it back to you, and make sure that they're not taking the same content they're providing to you to a whole bunch of other clients they might have. We've seen why that's a problem. So, one last word, and the word is quality. That's a theme that's run through all of my videos, and that's because Google is looking for quality, and you should be too. Now, yes, it's more work, but it's definitely worth it. So, if you've enjoyed this video, if you thought it was helpful and gave you some useful advice, then hit the share button, hit the like button. More importantly, why don't you post a comment? I'd love to hear what you have to say, and I'd love to respond and get a conversation going. So, remember, this is Marvin Kane inviting you to get found, do business, succeed. Thanks for watching.